Really, that's just semantics and technical stuff. The main point is that those that do not believe in Jesus Christ, if they die today, they are in a place of torment, awaiting the final judgment at the end of the age. Now, in Rob Bell's book, he states that Gehenna was a valley outside the walls of Jerusalem used as a garbage dump. It was continually burning, and wild animals would go and gnash their teeth, fighting over the scraps. Now, it was indeed a valley outside of Jerusalem. There is no archaeological evidence that it was a city dump. That idea was first presented by a rabbi named David Kimhi in 1200 AD. This was a rabbi that was writing from Europe in the Middle Ages who had never been to Israel, and he said it was by analogy the judgment of the wicked. So basically he was saying that this valley that was the garbage dump, although there's no evidence it was an analogy, a place used to describe a reality. It's kind of like saying work was murder. I mean, we know that going to work did not entail murdering anyone or being murdered. We understand that murder as a brutal, stressful act describes that work was brutal and it was stressful and it was difficult. It's kind of like, you know, when my dad's a truck driver, and so like when we were in LA and stuff, sometimes we'd be caught in the northbound parking lot, he call it, and that means that we're in a traffic jam. And obviously, being on the interstate, we were not in a literal parking lot where we could just vacate our vehicle and go do whatever, but it was an analogy to give the idea of we're stuck in a traffic jam and no one's moving, not even crawling. And so we see that we and the Lord used very real, specific things as an analogy for a spiritual, very real thing. So like, for example, when Jesus was talking to his disciples, and he said, when you say to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, it has to obey you, and it will be if you have faith. He was actually looking at Masada, which was King Herod's fortress that he had built on this mountain. And so there's all kinds of connotations to that worldly kingdoms will be cast into the sea. You know, anything that comes against you, any kingdom that comes against you, any leader that comes against you, you know, don't worry, because if you have faith, you overcome all of that. You know, I mean, like he said, be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. So he used a very real place of Masada to teach a spiritual principle that no matter the obstacle, no matter the mountain that you're facing, if you have faith, you can tell that mountain to be removed and cast into the sea. And so, even if there was archaeological evidence supporting that that valley was a garbage dump, it wouldn't mean that it was, Jesus was relegating it to a literal garbage dump. He was using it as an example of describing the place of torment. And in fact, I disagree with Zodhiates when he says there's no reference to flames, because in the story of the beggar and the rich man, the beggar is in intense heat and flames. So I just wanted to correct that really quick. So Francis Chan basically is like, if we go with Rob Bell's idea that Jesus was not talking about a literal hell, he was talking about this garbage dump, because he says, Rob Bell says, people toss their garbage and waste into this valley. There's a fire there burning constantly to consume the trash. Wild animals fought over the scraps of food along the edges of the heap. When they fought, their teeth would make a gnashing sound. Gehenna was the place with the gnashing of teeth where the fire never went out. Gehenna was an actual place that Jesus' listeners would have been familiar with. So the next time someone asks you if you believe in actual hell, you can always say, yes, I do believe that my garbage goes somewhere. Okay, so we see that he's just relegating it to that. But this is what Francis Chan says. He goes, but if Jesus was really referring to the literal city dump when he spoke of Gehenna, then many of his statements are awkward, to say the least. For example, Matthew 5:22, whoever says you fool will be liable to the garbage dump of fire. Matthew 5:29, it is better for you to lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into the garbage dump. Matthew 10:28, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in the garbage dump. And Matthew 18:9, it's better for you to enter life with one eye than with two eyes to be thrown into the garbage dump of fire. And so the main point is, you cannot say that hell doesn't exist, because Jesus used a real place to kind of describe some of its elements. But again, it has not been confirmed it was a trash dump. So it kind of makes the whole point mute anyway. Zodhiates says this about Gehenna. Religiously, it was a place of idolatrous and human sacrifices. These were first offered by Ahaz and Manasseh, who made their children pass through the fire to Moloch in this valley. And that's in 1 Kings 16:3, 2 Kings 21:6, 2 Chronicles 28:3, and 33:6. These sacrifices were probably made on the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, Jeremiah 7:31. In order to put an end to these abominations, Josiah polluted it with human bones and other corruptions. That was in 2 Corinthians 23:10, 13, and 14. But this worship of Moloch was revived under Jehoiakim in Jeremiah 11:10-13, Ezekiel 20:30. Okay? So over time, it took on the metaphorical reference for the place where the bodies of the wicked would be cast. So basically, in this valley, horrible, atrocious things occurred, and that includes the sacrificing of babies to this god of fire. And so the Jewish people would have known that, and they would have known what he was talking about. Now, I do want to read a passage. We're concluding our video, but it's in Revelation 20:11-15. This is after the return of the Lord. This is after the enemy is released one other time from his prison to go out and gather nations to come against God. And finally, they are all destroyed with the fire from God's mouth. And the enemy is thrown into the lake of fire. So in verse 11 it says, Then I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God. And books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books. Now, as I said earlier, your final destination is determined by who is your father. However, the intensity of the punishment is determined by how you lived on this earth. And so it says, the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them. Okay? So again we see Hades delivers up the people that have died over the millennia. And they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire, and this is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. That's why it says that it's better to be part of the first resurrection, not the second resurrection. So basically that means that the first resurrection is the resurrection of the believers, in which we receive our immortal bodies. But there is another resurrection in which those who did not believe are raised from the dead, and they are judged and thrown into the lake of fire. And it's like a courtroom scene. You know, really, it's like there is a trial. There's a trial going on. And like John 3, Jesus explained that those who don't believe are judged already, or condemned already. The Lord is called our advocate, mediator, which are legal terms. It's a term for lawyer. Daniel mentions the court of the Ancient of Days, in which the righteous will enjoy eternity with God, but the wicked will be destroyed. I believe that's in Daniel 7 or 11, can't remember, and then Daniel 12. So basically, humanity is on trial. And the way to get a not guilty verdict is to believe. That's it. That's all you have to do. To get a guilty verdict, don't believe. It's that simple. And there's no second chances. All of our deeds, whether good or bad, stem from belief or unbelief. If you believe in Jesus Christ, you will follow after His Spirit and live as He did. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ and you're not a Christian, then your sins stem from a heart of unbelief.